All right, welcome to the meeting. Hi, this is Loretta. I'm your president of INC. I have to apologize. I have the worst allergies ever, and my eyes are swollen. I was on prednisone, and I'm taking 4 Allegra a day for my allergist. It's pretty bad. So if you see me crying, that's what it is. So just wanted to forewarn everyone that I'm a little I'm still teary-eyed. It's just terrible. I woke up in the middle of the night crying. So it's not, it's just allergies. All right. So why don't we go ahead? We have a full agenda for today, but I wanted to welcome everybody on a very hot day, which is the perfect day to have the agenda, which I did show briefly for a second ago. So I want to go back to that and just say we do have a great presentation on heat islands. And so I'm really excited about this. I think we all understand that, the city, Colorado, the country, the planet, we're having climate issues. And this is a good time to talk about those things and kind of what we can do and what the city can do as a whole. So I think that's something that, we'll have that conversation today. The other thing is, I just want to remind everyone, speaking of which, we had several presentations in the past, and we'll talk about that, but I'll talk a little bit more about the sidewalk vote, and I'll repeat myself again, but that has been sent to all the voting delegates. If you're a paid INC member, then yes, you can vote on this. So this should be sent to you. And so this is just a reminder, do the Survey Monkey vote. We've attached a link that says, that shows the presentation at the June meeting. There was also a presentation at the ZAP meeting. You can get off the website. There was also a presentation at transportation. So I think we've gone over that several times. The reason and the rationale for the vote via Survey Monkey, we did not have a quorum of voting members at the last meeting, so we're doing it via Survey Monkey per our new bylaws. So I just want to let everyone know the rationale for that, and just remind people, and I'll try and remind again, because I think it's vital we have votes, and we're trying to follow our new bylaws. And so if you have any questions about those, again, please go to the website and look at that. Judy?
I was noting before the meeting got started, I realized that I hadn't seen my email for the Survey Monkey vote, and it's because it had ended up in my junk mail. So I just encourage everybody to look in many places. If you haven't seen it where you would expect it, those of you who are delegates, please look around, because it was in my my junk mail, and I don't know why. More things were in there from INC than ever before. So just vote.
Yeah, and
Judy, there's something that you can control about that. You can put INC on your white list, and your vendor can tell you how to do that, and that'll keep preventing that. Those people who have Gmail, if you discover that it's gone into the trash, move it into your incoming box, and that will prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, and that frequently happens. It's partly because I think it came from INC instead of Denver INC. And so that, anyway, just check and fix it. Yeah, exactly, Maggie. Thank you.
Yeah, again, thank you both for that. And I just want to repeat a couple of things in the chat, just that it was on a July 1st message, so that'll help you kind of zone in on where it was. But and what I did is I just put in my, search, I put sidewalks, and it came up. So that's a good thing too. So if you want to look for that also, if you voted at the last delegate meeting, again, please vote on the Survey Monkey. And again, for some of you, it could go to your junk mail or your spam mail. Drew, did you have a question?
Just a quick question. Is the Survey Monkey a blind vote? I mean, can people see how people voted?
Maggie, I think you're best to answer.
No,
Good.
we've made it so that we need to have you fill out what your RNO is so that we can keep track of the quorum. But other people can't see how you voted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Loretta.
Yeah. So any other questions anyone has? I think it's important that we all just make sure that we vote, and we'll look at that. And that's part of the thing, is that we need to know, you know, who is voting and how many, so if we have a quorum or not. And so those are things that we just take part in. That I don't think we're just, you know, I don't think we're sending out who's voted on what or how people had voted, but you know, anyway. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for doing that. And I know July, and thank you all again for being here on a very hot day. Hopefully you will stay cool. Why don't we go on? I want to start again. I'm going to put the agenda briefly again. So we're going to start with our treasurer report and our committee reports. Greg, do you want to go ahead and do the treasurer report?
Sure. Very quick, we have a total of $40,638.42 in cash and bank accounts. This includes $615 in checking, $39.60 in petty cash, $13,968.91 in our savings account, and $26,014.91 in our INC community fund. June was a pretty quiet month. We had $80 in membership renewals, plus minimal interest on our savings account. For expenses, we had $150 for sustainability, which included a $50 gift certificate as a result of a tent at Paul Cashman's event. Maybe Jane can fill us in on that. And also we sent representatives to the Planning to Thrive conference. I'm not sure I've correctly posted that. It was $100 for 6 people to attend. And I prepaid the rest of the year for our storage unit, which was $345. So we were paid through December 31st, and we're actually under budget for storage this year. We had budgeted $600, and we've spent $543.09. So total expenses for the month were $461.49. For the year, $3,091.26. For the year, total income has been $2,666.33. So we are short $425 approximately, and we are 50% through the year. So actually we're doing fairly good for where we are right now. Any questions?
Jane?
I want to thank Greg for finding a new storage facility, because it's much easier to get into. It's much nicer, and he's worked hard to make sure that all of our equipment is well stored and maintained. And I just wanted to thank him for taking the time and effort to do all of that. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Jane.
Yeah, and thanks, Greg. I mean, I just wanted to explain to people that we used to have an office space, which, you know, I mean, a lot of us don't have offices anymore. We do have offices in our homes, but we had an office at SWIC. And with the passing of Larry Ambrose, and we didn't know what was going to happen at SWIC, we ended up making sure that we moved out of there, and we've kind of been floating a little bit. Now it seems like we have a permanent storage. And so again, thanks Jane and Greg for moving everything and getting us there. And thanks so much for that. So other committee reports.
I have one.
Thanks, Christine.
Okay. I don't see Ian if he's here.
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
do you
here.
want to?
Yeah, I'm happy
Okay, I
to
was
go.
going to, and then I'll follow up.
Sure. First question I have is, where's the storage unit? Because I actually have some sound equipment that INC used when we were doing, Zap was using in-person meetings, excuse me. I'd love to be able to actually store that away. But I can take that offline. This last month, we had intended to have 2 speakers, one who was going to come talk to us about how land use, transportation, and our climate goals kind of all work together. And unfortunately, they canceled because they got sick. And we were supposed to have a Colorado eviction defense project, whom works at the Capitol, who was going to brief us on housing bills. Unfortunately, they double booked themselves for the Pride Parade. And so I believe I have them secured for the 24th. And so you should be expecting them at the end of the month, our regular meeting that we have. So that's my update on my end.
Okay, and I just wanted to add that we had requested the Community Development and Planning come in May to outline, quote, how CPD uses neighborhood plans to meet climate goals and how Denver's going about strengthening the neighborhood planning process as it pertains to climate sustainability and open space. So we wanted to see how CPD is working to increase its guidance on land use, zoning, and development in light of climate change, but they canceled in May and they still haven't responded to our request for June. So we're waiting. And we understand and have been talking to them about Denver's CASR, Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resilience Group. And we know the city's working, as you all do, on reducing greenhouse emissions through e-bikes and electrification and building code revisions and tree planting. But what CASR's efforts are laudable, but where are the efforts to add large park space to our shrinking pool and our strained systems like Wash Park? That's kind of missing, or creating urban forest. And especially in light of today's discussion, I think it's important that CPD chime in on this issue. So we're continuing to hope that they will come through.
I would just add that there are 2 other quick updates. One, that the expanding housing affordability metrics have passed. The policy is passed, and so that takes effect now. And I know that there was some interesting stories circulating about permits trying to get in before the inclusionary housing requirements. And the other news that I read and I'm trying to reach out to is that the city hired an urban designer who I believe is, I'm not sure what their role is going to be, but I think we're excited to build a relationship with them. And I guess I would just close by saying I'm excited for the Seed Island conversation. I think many people know I worked on the Denver Green Roof Initiative, and that was really the whole goal of it. So.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any questions for Christine or Ian? Keith, you have your hand up.
This was mostly just an update from the Sustainability and Climate Committee, but I think it might pertain to what Ian is referring to, in that we're going to do the Climate and Sustainability Committee is going to do a follow-up presentation to this event in August on the 25th from 6:30 to 8. That's going to be from the City Forester's office. And we're hoping to have Mike Swanson and Elizabeth Judd, who is, I believe, the new urban forestry planner in the office, on to talk about their some of their urban forestry plans for the city as well.
Okay, can you repeat, Keith, can you repeat that again? That was.
Sorry, are you able to hear me well?
Yes, but.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So it's going to be August 25th from 6:30 to 8. on Zoom again, and we'll get that link posted up on the Inc. account for folks to register. And it's going to be the Office of the City Forester, who are going to be talking about some of the city's urban forestry plans.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Clearly, when they're talking about planting trees, and this is a bad time to plant them right now, clearly, because, you know, not having much precipitation and the heat, it's bad time to do it. But we certainly need more canopy, and I think that's one of our conversations. So, Jane.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add to our committee report and thank Mark Orrs and Adam Metzler, who helped with our booth that we had at Paul Cashman's Earth Day Remastered on June 26th in Washington Park. And we've got a few new members to come to our committee who I see are here this morning. So welcome to you guys, and keep joining us. And, you know, the whole discussion about trees is what we're trying to do this entire summer, because we feel like it's such an integral part of our climate situation. And it's something that, you know, most people can get involved with. If it's not in your yard, maybe helping a neighbor or helping your neighborhood community work on stabilizing trees in the neighborhood and planting more trees. So that's sort of our focus this summer.
And native trees too is a good one too. So and ones that live in this kind of climate, right? All right, Joel, do you have a?
Absolutely. Hi, good morning, everyone. The INC Transportation Committee is meeting this coming Thursday, and that's the 14th. We meet from 6 to 8 p.m. via Zoom. I'm going to put in chat the link to sign up to our Zoom meeting. Everyone is welcome. We have 4 topics this month. Denver Moves Everyone 2050. So Dottie has a number of plans for mobility, all with a family name of Denver Moves. There's Denver Moves Bikes, there's Denver Moves Pedestrians and Trails, there's Denver Moves Transit. This plan's a little different. Denver Moves Everyone is kind of the umbrella plan to decide on sequencing the various improvements and investments that are called for in all the other plans. So how do we decide what to do first? This is an update to what was the city's transportation master plan, which is now quite old, but you can really think of it as the transportation master plan because it's deciding, you know, what goes first and what goes second. A lot of that is technical. It has to do with what funding sources are available, what funding sources are dedicated to what grants can be applied for different projects, which ones will qualify, what's the Dr. Cog funding cycle. But added to that very technical and kind of budgetary look is also community input. What are our values? What do we want to see first? What's the equity lens? So I would guess they're about halfway through this effort. They've just completed a big community input round, and we'll be hearing from one of the core members of the team about how it's going and what the outcomes are looking like and what the community input will be going forward. So it's kind of a midpoint check-in. On micromobility, we have a presentation from Stephen Reho. If you followed when we switched from kind of the anything goes bikes and scooters and everything to the 2-vendor approach, Stephen Reho was the lead, and Dottie leading that process of different vendors proposing that they be one of the 2 working in Denver. Denver imposed a lot of goals on those, so distributing the bikes and scooters more thinly throughout the city so that more different neighborhoods, even if they have lower utilization, have access to them. We want to find out how that's been working out. And they also had some goals that the vendors would put in like bike and scooter corrals, places where they would gather rather than being cluttered on the sidewalks. We're going to find out how that's going, as well as looking forward what's next. Third topic is during the pandemic, there were a number of streets that were made bike ped only, or bike ped and cars can go, but they had barriers in the way, so bikes could only go through slowly. And that made a lot of sense for a lot of people needing to walk. They couldn't be filling just the sidewalks because you had to get out of your house and walk because otherwise we were all just at home. And most of those have been rolled back, as you've seen over time as things open back up. But what are the lessons learned and what's the future of shared streets? Jay Decker from Dottie is going to join us. He's the Transportation Innovation Manager, and he's putting together a project to say, what did we learn and what do we want to take forward from this for shared streets in the future? So unlike some of the other topics, which are midpoint check-ins, this is really right at the beginning. We're going to say, well, how are they scoping this project? What are the goals? What's going to be the community involvement? And then finally, one of our regular attendees, Alan Cowgill, is going to give us an update on some research he and a group of people are doing to what he calls decriminalize walking. If you look at citations that are given to people for jaywalking and just using the space, using our mobility space, it's disproportionately, the citations are disproportionately on people of color. And we can learn from what other cities have done that have addressed this. And so he's going to summarize the data he's gathered and lessons from other cities in an overall effort that he's calling Freedom to Walk. So we'll be hearing about this for the first time. 4 topics, 6 to 8 p.m. this coming Thursday. Link to sign up to Zoom is in the chat, and everyone is welcome.
Hi, thanks, Joel. Does anybody have questions for Joel? I want to mention, Denver has Vision Zero. Unfortunately, in the last week, there's been 2 pedestrian deaths. So one was a few blocks from my house on Broadway. So, it's really unfortunate. And I think we need to really consider how we have safe walking and how we have safe biking too, because as a cyclist, it's sometimes scary. So, again, I'm just going to mention one thing. The city is opening up the e-bikes that you can get a discount, and that they're reopening that up again in Monday, July 11th. And in a month, if they've given out all those vouchers, I heard they may reopen those. So those of you who are thinking, I don't want to bike, but you might want to e-bike, there's an opportunity, right? So just want to put that out there. All right, do we have any other committee reports? Anyone else want to bring anything up?
Hey, Loretta, in terms of the e-bikes, if you want that rebate, I would apply literally on Monday because they're already backlogged and they have 5,000 requests already.
Right, and you have to purchase it quickly is what I've heard. So, there was other discounts that are gone. Oh, thanks, Adam. He just put it in the chat. So, and I'm thinking about it, but you have to find out where you're going to get the bike and you have to make sure that you can purchase that. I know REI sells some, but I don't know where. I mean, there's other bike shops too. So
there's a list on the site that you could access of all the bike stores that are approved by the city of Denver. It's a pretty good list.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else? Let me put up the agenda again. Make sure I have it there. Nope, sorry. Oh, there it is. It did come up. If I have something else on my screen, there we go. Let me get it up again. All right. So I'm just going to do a second reminder for those of you who may have joined us later. Just if you are a delegate, what we do like is that you put you can rename yourself, you can go to your image, or you can go to participants at the bottom of your screen, and you can go to the little ellipse, and you can click on that and go down to a drop-down menu that shows rename yourself. Put D for delegate, and then put your R and O. Try and fit that in there if you can.
I think you're showing last month's agenda there. You were previously showing this month's agenda.
No, this is this month's.
This is June's agenda, Loretta, sorry.
No, not the one
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, okay, so hold on. Because I did have July's
Yeah.
on my screen
Yeah.
anyway.
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
There
That's
it
great.
is. Sorry. Sorry, it showed July on mine. So anyway, so I want to just remind people that due to our new bylaws, we didn't have a quorum, and we sent out the vote on the Denver Deserve sidewalks via Survey Monkey. So I'm just telling everyone, if you voted last month, please vote, because this one will, we want everyone to vote on the Survey Monkey, and so that we have a vote on that topic. All right. So the other thing is, I just wanted, I think we're waiting a few minutes for our presenters, is what I've heard. So I thought I would open it up for a few minutes to discuss if anybody has anything going on in their neighborhood they would like to just kind of chime in and fill us in. If you have an event going on, if you have something that you think is of interest to folks, we have a few minutes. The time should really be about 9:45. But so if anybody has anything, go ahead, raise your hand, or chime in if you're doing something fun like a neighborhood picnic, or you have a get together of people in your RNO, or some kind of event that you'd like to announce. Please let us know right now. That would be a great time to do that. Anybody? Nobody has anything. Mark. Mark, do you want to unmute?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. I appreciate your time. It's along the same line with sustainability, but just something to keep in mind. I believe a few years ago, a referendum vote was passed by the city voters to establish green roofing initiatives. And I've never heard anything after the passage of that. And I'm hoping at some point today that that's something that will fit into our conversation. And I'd like to know whether or not that is being implemented and how the program is working thus far. Thank you.
That's a great one, Mark. And I think one of the things, and this is something that does come up, and I think someone else could speak more about this, is city council had to kind of mold that a little bit to really work. But does anybody have anything that they would like to, or is that going to be part of our presentation today? Anybody?
Loretta, I can briefly speak to that.
That would be great. Perfect.
Yeah, I work with that pretty much all the time. The green roof ordinance translated into the green building ordinance. It was modified by the city to be more expansive, actually, than just green roofs. And it is now the green building ordinance, which is required for all buildings that are over 25,000 square feet. And it is required for all city buildings that are over 5,000 square feet. So it is being implemented, it is being used, and I think it's a pretty good program. It offers, there's 7 different choices that you can choose to comply with the green building ordinance. I won't go into detail about all of them, but you can look at it. I'll put a link in the chat that you can click on and look at the details if you want to dig into it.
Thanks, Adam.
Yep.
Mark, maybe if you want to reach out to Adam, that's great. So
yes, I wrote his name down. I plan to do that. Thank you very much, Loretta.
yeah, and somebody who has some knowledge, that's wonderful. Okay, next person, Thomas.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that on Earth Day, they planted about 150 new trees at Sloan's Lake Park. And I helped dig some of the holes.
That's awesome. I'm doing construction at my house. I had to give away, and we gave away some native, we had babies from our Gamble Oak. And so we've given some of those away. So I'm always happy to give away trees. Thanks, Thomas. That's great work. Have they all survived? That's my question.
The ones near my house have, but I need to walk the whole park because it just pretty much went all the way around because they took down a bunch of the ash trees that were getting trouble from the emerald ash borer, and then some were just dying of drought age.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that. Pete,
I
do
have
you,
a- I-
oh, something,
Sorry, this is J. April from Brun. I wanted to know when people go for that plant a tree program that's free from the city, who's responsible for maintaining those trees?
usually the property owner.
Are they educated in maintaining trees?
And Katie's shaking her head, so maybe Katie can chime in.
Unmuting myself. Yeah, when we did it a couple of years ago, yeah, definitely as they're planting, and they'll give you a little handout too, telling you how often to go out and water it and what to do in the winter and stuff like that. So yes, they do give you heads up, and you can always go back to the city forester too, who will give you more information if you need.
Thanks, Katie. And that's the thing. I mean, people don't think you have to water in the winter. Yeah, do. It's dry here. Let me go to Pete, then I can come back to you, Katie.
So I just wanted to give an announcement. Honey is partnering with a bike organization to teach people how to bike safely around the neighborhood, how to get onto main bike corridors and things like that. And they're looking for other RNOs to partner with to help you teach people how to use these new e-bikes and bike safely around your neighborhood. So they've got a whole list of events, but they're very excited to get more RNOs involved in this sort of program. So if you're interested, I can provide more details. Reach out to me.
And I do see that link in the chat. The other thing is, I think we should have a training for drivers to know how to deal with the cyclists.
For sure.
Loretta, I would also just say that our speakers have joined the call now. And if there's any specific questions that relate to trees or tree canopy or the heat islands, if we could probably hold off on those and we can get started. But then, you know, whatever other questions there are, we can probably address.
Okay, we have a couple more folks. And then also there was a note in the chat about save the date about Sun Valley Viaduct Night Market. Is that near Meow Wolf? Is that the one? I don't know if that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So it's near Meow Wolf, if people know where that is. We'll go quickly then, Katie, and then Miles.
Yeah, I was just going to tell people, Paul Cashman has been helping our neighborhood by having Steve Chardonnay work with us. Our numbers are way, way down. And, you know, we're down to like 4 or 5 active people in the university, around the University of Denver neighborhood. And there's more and more neighborhood associations we realize in this area who aren't members of INC, have no idea we exist. So every time we've been talking up INC, as well as explaining, you know, Cashman knows very well, all our neighborhood associations are struggling. And it's time for fresh blood. And people, do you have good ideas on how to get new people involved and meetings at work and stuff like that? So I just wanted to put that out, that we're actively trying to liven up.
Miles?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know Colfax BRT is having an open house. I'll put the link in the notes, but it's at Carla Madison, or you can do Zoom, and it's on August 2nd. So that project's moving along.
Okay, great. Thank you. One last person, Georgia. Do you want to unmute?
Okay, sorry about that. I'm with City Park Friends and Neighbors, which is an RNO that advocates for City Park. And we're very interested in pushing a recommendation in the City Park Master Plan, which is to convert the large South Meadow, south of the museum, which is all bluegrass, into a pollinator-friendly wildflower, native grass, native plants area. And it's not only a recommendation in the master plan, but also in the irrigation master plan. So I'll just throw it out there. If anyone is interested in joining us, we're thinking we'd like to get it into the capital improvement budget down the line at some point. Candy Tabaka's office is working with us. And we just believe it would be a wonderful addition to the park and to the health of Denver to create that area that would consume less water and be pollinator friendly, etc. So that's what we are up to. And please let me know if you're interested in joining us. We would like to meet with other stakeholders and groups like the Water Board and Denver Botanic Gardens, etc., to promote this idea.
Oh, great, Georgia. Reach out to me. I'm part of the Native Plant Society, and I think the Native Plant Society would probably be a part of that. There's other organizations. I give away a lot of xeric and native plants, and there's some other groups that work on that. I converted my front lawn to from Kentucky bluegrass to blue grama, which takes at least a third of the water. So people think it's interesting. Sometimes
I'm in the process of doing that to my strip of grass between the street and the sidewalk. And across the street, they're doing the same thing. So I'm hoping we start small, like a neighborhood project to do that.
Yeah.
And it feels really good to do it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can have things bloom all summer long, which is so nice. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. I love to hear from folks and hear what's going on out there. I'm going to hand this over, and why don't we go ahead and Jane, are you taking over from me? And then
Thank you, Loretta. Yes, I'm co-chair with Keith Myers. We're the co-chairs of the Climate and Sustainability Committee for INC. And today we're pretty happy because what we're doing is we're working with zoning and planning and parks and rec committees because the issue of heat islands doesn't just affect one committee or one part of the city, it affects all of us every day. And so we thought, let's just do this in the hottest month, or I guess there's been a little debate before the meeting started whether August or July is the hottest, but today's prediction is around 100, so that's pretty warm. Let's see. So during the year of 2022, we have sort of dedicated our meetings towards trees because they can have a huge impact. And does it feel like Denver's getting hotter? Yes, it is. Each year, Denver is seeing more days above 90 degrees, making it harder to get cool. But trees and vegetation help to provide a cooling effect on the mile-high city. Let's hear about these heat islands from our guest speakers today and how we can get involved in helping to cool down our neighborhoods. So it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker this morning. Linda Hwong is with the Trust for Public Lands, and she's going to talk about heat islands in Denver. Good morning, Linda. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jane. Thanks for having me. It's really great to see so many people on this call today. Jane, let me ask you, I know we have a couple other speakers. About how much time do I have so that I can kind of gauge you correctly?
I think you have a clear 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll have Q&A.
Okay, 10 to 12. Okay, so actually what I'm going to do then is just, I may run, okay, so I have some slides, and I'm going to try to run through them maybe a little bit faster than I would have otherwise. So apologies for not telling you that, for not asking that beforehand. So thank you again, folks. It's so nice to be here. I spoke with this group, or maybe a smaller committee of this group, 2 years ago. And so it's really, it's always a good opportunity to kind of re-engage, and I just love hear what's going on. I live in Oakland, California, and we are also struggling with water issues, extreme heat all the time. I was reading on the news this morning that you all are expecting a pretty hot weekend. And so the conversation is timely. And as we all know, every year feels like it's getting hotter and hotter. And every year is like the, you know, another heat wave where we're breaking records all the time. Okay, so let me just, you know how Zoom is, I have all this other crap that's in my way. So, okay, so I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about how we track. I'm gonna start at kind of the big scale nationally, and then we'll drill down into Denver, and I think that'll be a nice handoff for your next two speakers. So I just wanna set a little bit of the context. So at TPL, we believe access to the outdoors is a fundamental human need. Everybody needs to enjoy the benefits of having really good outdoor access. Unfortunately, in this country, our data shows that 100 million people do not have a park within a 10-minute walk of where they live. And that 10-minute walk is a really important metric, and I will get into that deeper with you. Just a little bit about who we are at TPL, for those of you not familiar. We've been around for 50 years now. We are working on parks, we convert schoolyards, we're building trail systems, protecting a lot of land. We have a big conservation finance team as well that's working to raise public funding. We've done a lot of work in Denver, in Colorado, to help raise bond measures and other financing for parks and open space. And we're always trying to protect as much land as we can. We are particularly proud of the work that we've done to put 9 million people within a 10-minute walk of a park. And we try to really dig in and be thoughtful about where we are locating our parks and schoolyards projects. We have made a commitment to addressing climate action, community health, and equity in particular. So we think a lot about where there are communities that have been marginalized through institutionalized systems that you are all pretty well aware of. So we really feel proud of the work that we do, and in particular, the people that we are working to give really good access to parks and open space. And, you know, I think many of you have likely been paying attention to a lot of the data that's been emerging over the years about institutionalized racism policies like redlining. It's really unfortunate when we look across the database and it confirms that, in fact, from a park perspective, parks at a majority non-white neighborhoods tend to be half the size, and they serve 5 times more people. So we all remember what it was like in those early days of the pandemic when people were just flocking to parks. It meant if you were in a neighborhood that was predominantly people of color, it meant that your park was smaller, and you probably had a lot more people out there with you. So as we were all trying to keep, you know, a safe physical distance from each other, that park size and the number of people served per parks became a really important metric, at least for us here at TPL. And that information that we have, we maintain one of the largest databases in the world around parks. We know where every park is in this country. And my team in particular, collects a lot of spatial information and demographic information. What we do is feed that directly to our local field teams. So we have a really fantastic Denver-based team that has done some phenomenal work. And I'm happy to talk about that in more detail, but this gives you just a quick snapshot of some of the work that we've been doing across the state. So just to get into the heart of the matter here, we run something every year called the Park Score Index, and we rank the 100 largest cities on how well their park systems are meeting the needs of their residents. And you can see here just a list of the top 10. And what I want to do is show you Denver. Denver, no change in the rankings from last year. They ranked number 18. You can see some of the metrics there. I've highlighted where Denver sits within at least that top 20 cities. What's interesting to me here as we're getting into this conversation is, so you can see the 5 categories there that we look at across a park system: access, acreage, amenities, equity, and investment. And when it comes to acreage, 9% of Denver's city area is used for parks and rec. And the national median for all of the cities, the 14,000 cities and towns in our Park Score Index is 15% is the median. And across the 100 largest cities, the median is 19%. So you can see Denver's share is smaller. And I think that's what, so it's an interesting conversation that I think will provoke for folks as we get into this today. When we release Park Score, we try to kind of hone in on a particular topic where we see a lot of really interesting trends, actions, innovative ideas that we can take and scale out and help hopefully share that information with other park systems. And so this year we were looking really specifically at climate action. And so when we survey the 100 largest cities, we have kind of a paper-based survey and then spatial data survey that goes out to all of these cities and all of the agencies and nonprofit organizations that also support parks. And so it ends up being about 350 or so organizations receive, we are getting data from them. And it's a remarkable story this year when we asked questions very specifically on what climate action cities were taking. And we could see is 85% of park and rec agencies are doing some type of work related to addressing climate change. And in particular, just a couple of specific bullets on what exactly they're doing. And you can see it's a really nice range of actions. And maybe not surprising and really apropos to this conversation today is how much people are doing to address extreme heat. For those of you tracking that, you are probably aware that extreme heat is the #1 weather-related killer of people here in this country. So anything people can do to mitigate heat is going to be useful. From our data alone, we know that within a 10-minute walk service area around parks. So what we do is every park that if you think about a park, we draw a 10-minute walk. It ends up being about a half a mile service area around that park. And our data from our own urban heat island data set shows that those areas inside that 10-minute walk area can be as much as 6 degrees cooler. And you all know on a hot day, the difference between 100 degrees and 94 degrees actually it's pretty palpable. And as you get hotter and hotter and we get into the triple digits, the 6 degrees becomes even more, in some cases it can be deadly. So again, anything that people are doing to bring temperatures down is going to be useful. I'd had the slide, I think, before, maybe I should have had it earlier, but basically just gives you a sense from a spatial perspective how we calculate 10-minute walk statistics. And we do something called a network analysis. We don't draw a circle around the park as the crow flies. It's actually based on a walkable road network. So if you have parks that have, a highway overpass and you got to go around it, we take that into consideration. If you have, rail lines or buildings next to parks, we like to think about what is an actual walkable network. Okay, so just getting into Denver, through the ParkServe database, for those of you who are not familiar, you can go to parkserve.org, type in any city. In this case, if you pull up Denver, you'll have a menu on the left-hand side, and you can actually check and uncheck a bunch of boxes. You can see where there are schoolyards or there are playgrounds. You can pull up a lot of equity data, and we also included a national heat island data set for every city. So this is what this looks like for Denver. I think it's not difficult at all to run across a similar set of statistics that you see on the right-hand side there around, areas of extreme heat. Those are pretty big numbers. And I think I would direct you to just the bottom 2 bullets there around the difference between areas within and outside a 10-minute walk as they compare to the average for the entire city. And so, I think as we'll get into it, Denver is getting, almost all cities in the United States are getting a little bit hotter every year. And so this just gives you a little bit more of the data for folks who are trying to help make the case for more tree canopy, more native vegetation, just, removal of impervious surfaces. And I'll just put a even finer point on that. A couple years ago, within the Park Score Index, we released park equity data for at least the 100 largest cities. And what we did was we wanted to understand who actually had 10-minute walk access to a park, and when they got to that park, how much green space did they actually have access to? And so we have data on race, and what you can see here is the dark brown areas are block groups with a predominantly white population. The blue ones are people of color. And you can see the color coding. The darker orange areas are where people have more park acreage. And so generally speaking, you can see the data here. You have people who live in neighborhoods where most people identify as person of color have access to less park space than folks in predominantly white neighborhoods. You see a similar disparity when we look at household income. And this information becomes really critical because the data across the United States shows that these neighborhoods that have historically been disenfranchised and marginalized tend to suffer very extreme climate change challenges. So things like flooding, things like extreme heat. And so to the extent that we can begin to direct resources toward helping neighborhoods become more climate resilient, we are trying to offer this data, or we offer this data out for cities to sort of help direct where tree planting, other climate actions can take place. And this data is also all publicly available. So again, you can go to TFL's website, go to Park Score, type in Denver, and you can find all of this information right there. Let's see, the last slide that I'll just leave you with is going back to this slide that I had showed you previously. So a lot of cities doing really interesting things, but across the 100 largest cities, we saw that 14 of them were taking what we kind of consider a systematic look at what they were doing. And when we say systematic look, it means that they have set policies, goals for achieving some percentage of tree canopy cover, and as well looking across the entire park system to see what they can do. And Denver Parks and Rec in particular is just a world-class park system that's looking across the entire park system and saying, great, where could we be thinking about canopy? Where can we be thinking about impervious surface? I was looking at the Denver Park and Rec website today. They're looking at, they're keeping cooling centers, libraries open. So again, a lot of creative thinking across the park system on what they can do. There's no shortage of actions that agencies can take, and it's so nice to hear how creative people are getting in the city of Denver. So I think I'm going to hang out here with folks as your next speakers continue, and we'll take questions later, I think. So that's it for me. Let me stop sharing.
Great. Thank you, Linda. We do have time for a few questions right now, and we have
okay.
Some in. First, a couple people are commenting on the 10-minute walking time and wondering how that was determined, and also differentiating between folks maybe who have impediments to walking and other issues. Could you talk about that a little?
Yeah, that's such a good comment, and I appreciate it so much. So the 10-minute walk or half a mile metric is a one way to get everybody to, it's one metric that helps us think about apples to apples versus apples to oranges and buildings and helicopters. It's something that across the country we can say, look, generally speaking, let's look for one metric that gives us at least a starting point to get a sense for who does and who doesn't have access to a park. It is absolutely the case that some people are rolling, some people are strolling much slower, some people are walking a lot faster, some people are biking. And at the end of the day, we rely on, the field teams working directly with park agencies to take all of that into consideration. I think there are a lot of ways that you could measure what you consider to be access to the outdoors, access to parks and open space. We start with 10-minute walk because it's an easy thing that everybody can kind of visualize. People generally know, 10 minutes is there is a higher likelihood for most people in this country to walk 10 minutes somewhere versus if we said it's a 30-minute walk or an hour walk. And even a half a mile distance is sort of hard for people to visualize as well.
Great, thank you. Keith, do you want to ask your question about streets versus open space?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for doing this, Linda, too. We really appreciate it. And my question's a little convoluted, but I guess I'm trying to figure out if there's a difference in heat changes that have been recorded with, kind of tree cover and tree canopy along street that's planted along streets versus, open spaces and those effects on neighborhoods in terms of tree canopy there, or if there's a more cooling effect with one versus the other, or if there's any data in that regard.
The data that I've seen is spotty at best. And what we know is that places that we would consider, deep green with high canopy cover in combination with native vegetation, and the more vegetation, the better, tends to yield a higher cooling value, to just be really technical about it. So canopy alone, right, over impervious surface versus canopy with native vegetation, you're going to have a higher cooling effect with vegetation below that canopy. So Vivek Chandas at Portland State University has done some really interesting research where he gets people out on bicycles. They have temperature gauges with them, so they're getting kind of that surface temperature, and they're biking around cities and capturing, and that's where you get really fine-grained data. But I've seen different reports from him, from NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, that shows that the combination of canopy and vegetation below is where you get a bigger cooling effect.
Great, thank you.
And then I'm sorry, as a follow-up, really, is there, if you just have a park and it's just grass, or, it's just open and there aren't very many trees, does that have much of a cooling effect as well on that area, or is that maintain the current heat level?
For the data that we've seen in open space alone, sometimes grass alone gives you a little bit of a cooling effect versus asphalt, but not that much more. You really need that canopy.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Adam Meltzer asks, what are the other 13 cities that are taking a systematic approach to addressing climate change?
Oh man, I thought that maybe somebody was going to ask that, and I thought, I don't have that list in front of me right now. I do not have it, but I am also happy to put my email through the chat, and then if you send me a note, I will get you the list of those 14 cities.
Great, thanks. There's some discussion about park size and how that affects the reduction of heat impact.
I think it's tied to the question, just the discussion we were having around the combination of canopy and vegetation. So it's not so much the size of the park, but what is the combination of canopy and veg there? So you could have a tiny little, triangle park that is entirely a mini forest in that spot versus a huge open space that is just grass. And so I would imagine that you would see a significant temperature differential if you're standing in this mini forest in the middle of this tiny triangle versus just on a huge open field under the sun.
All right, great. Anybody else have any comments or questions before we move on to the next presentation? All right, thank you so much, Linda. Someone did actually type something in here that helps us transition into our next topic, which is related to Denver's history of trees and heat. Jane, are you ready for that next presentation?
I'm going to go ahead and do a quick little intro, but thank you so much, Linda. And I would say that this is a perfect lead in to our next presentation, which we're actually going to do a video of a presentation that Lindsay Cutler from the Park People did in our May climate and sustainability meeting around the history of trees and heat islands in Denver specifically. And really, Denver doesn't have a lot of traditional native tree growth. And I think she touches on this in her presentation about, the unique challenges of Denver's ecosystem in growing trees in general and creating that canopy. So I believe, Maggie, you're going to be able to show that video.
For the day, and we got a little preview from our next speaker, Lindsay Cutler, who is program manager at the Park People. Lindsay brings to the Park People 18 years of experience in ecology and landscape design for private and government clients. The 8 years prior to joining Plant People, Lindsay owned and operated a small landscape design build firm in Denver, Colorado, providing ecologically sensitive landscape designs for residential clients. She also founded a school farm dedicated to regenerative practices. And prior to that, Lindsay worked as a field ecologist, conducting botanical surveys throughout the Intermountain West. Lindsay earned her master's in landscape architecture from University of Colorado, Denver, and a bachelor's in geography and environmental studies from UCLA. A lifelong hiker, backpacker, and self-described plant nerd, Lindsay is delighted to oversee the Denver Digs Trees program, which already was mentioned earlier today, Lindsay, and community forester programs, as well as various neighborhood-specific projects such as Greener, Healthier, Globeville, Elyria, Swansea. So Lindsay, thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to learning more from you today.
Thanks, Mark. I have not read my bio on the website since I wrote it. So that was fun to listen to. I really appreciate that. Let's see, I'm going to share my screen here. I think that looks okay. And go ahead and see if I can't get that going. All right, are you looking at my notes or are you looking at the slideshow?
We see your slideshow, thanks.
Okay, awesome, thank you. I will minimize that. Well, I'm super honored to be here today. Mark totally introduced me, so that makes it easy because I don't think I have anything in the talk that I'm giving that mentioned even my name. So that's nice. Just thank you for having me, and it was really great, Meryl, to see you. I got my Colorado Master Gardener certificate. I don't remember how many years ago now, but Meryl was a huge inspiration during that program. And I just love extension so much and turn to their resources all of the time. So I just think it's really cool to be presenting at the same time. I'm honored. So for those of you that don't know us, the Park People is a 52-year-old nonprofit organization. We're a private nonprofit. We are actually a separate entity from the city and from Denver Parks and Recreation. We do work in close partnership with the Parks Department and the Office of the City Forester on many of our projects and programs, but it's a little bit of a common just misconception that we're part of the city. So we like to mention that. Our mission is to work with communities to plant trees and improve parks for a healthy, resilient future. And we like to call ourselves Denver's sort of parks and trees nonprofit. We believe that healthy parks help grow healthy communities. We believe that our community forest not only makes our neighborhoods beautiful places to live, but provides critical functions to the health, well-being, and sustainability of urban life. And we believe that all Denver residents should have access to these critical urban resources. And we also believe in the power of community action. I won't take too long here, but I do like to begin with a little bit of context. And I know Meryl hit on this just with the tree species that do and don't do well here. But we sit at a high altitude at the base of the Rocky Mountains. We're in a super arid climate, and the natural ecology of Denver is a shortgrass prairie. As you can see in this painting of the original indigenous communities and early white settlers in what would become the Denver area, that's sort of the Cherry Creek and South Platte there. Open spaces were abundant, but trees were not a significant part of the natural landscape. They were restricted to riparian areas adjacent to rivers and creeks. And so, of course, that's where we see most of our native species growing today. White settlement of the area brought about the growth of the city, industrialization, which was made for what was described as a thriving but ugly urban experience. And I think this picture was taken somewhere in the vicinity of the Valverde area today. In the early 1900s, Mayor Robert Speer began aggressively creating a system of parks and parkways, planting trees to bring beauty, recreation, clean air, and flood and fire breaks to Denver neighborhoods and make urban life more livable. His legacy is not clean. You know, he displaced communities as he did this. So we do like to acknowledge that that is part and parcel with the legacy of sort of that City Beautiful movement. So Denver today is home to more than 700,000 people, with 2.8 million people in the broader, didn't mean to do that, broader metropolitan area. And we're growing rapidly. We're actually growing by almost 1,000 new people each month. Many parts of Denver, as you can see from this sort of iconic picture here, have a robust tree canopy, and our city, like doubtless, has a wonderful system of parks and parkways. We like to call ourselves a city in a forest. These parks and trees function to bring important ecological balance to our built environment and to make our city more livable. Over the past 52 years, we have infused tens of millions of dollars into more than 50 park improvement projects in the city's public spaces. Many of these well-known places that reflect the history and character of Denver, and many lesser-known sites that also shape the experience of neighborhoods. And maybe just looking at this list, you recognize some of those from your local neighborhood parks. In recent years, while we still do park improvement projects and fiscal sponsorship of smaller, just sort of helping fundraise for community identified park improvement projects, we also have really emphasized urban forestry. We have 4 ongoing programs that support Denver's urban forest. We engage the community, individuals, businesses, and the philanthropic community in planting and stewarding the urban forest. And I'll go over some of those later on in this presentation. They definitely are just varied strategies for planting trees. And we hope that, you know, one or more of them is sort of interesting and goes beyond a little bit Denver Digs, which we are sort of more well known for than other programs. So Denver has 2.2 million trees functioning as essential green infrastructure. And these trees are the air conditioners in our city. And I know Meryl had a tree benefits slide, so I'm just going to kind of cruise through this one. They're serving the functions of a multi-million-dollar stormwater facility. They're filtering out pollutants from air and water, serving critical functions, mitigating and adapting to climate change by sequestering carbon and cooling and protecting the health of everybody in our city, including the most vulnerable people in our communities. They're protecting biodiversity, providing critical habitat. And then in addition to environmental services, trees also provide economic, health, and social benefits to our communities. People are willing to spend more time and money in business areas with nice tree cover. Landscaping, including trees, can increase property value by 20 to 30%. And studies show that trees support our physical and mental health by encouraging us to spend time outdoors and to have active lifestyles. Patients with views of trees and greenery have faster recovery times than those without views of nature. And finally, tree planting activities provide valuable opportunities for community building, which supports the social fabric of our communities and our capacity to cope with and adapt to challenges. But Denver's forest still has a long way to go. We're only 60% stocked, and that's actually declining. The new data that's coming out right now has shown overall throughout the city a 2% decline in the last 2 years, and we actually think that that decline could be much larger. The forest, according to the sort of 2014 data, is 60% stocked. The effects of rapid population growth are outpacing our tree canopy. And the emerald ash borer, an invasive pest, was found in Colorado and is encroaching on Denver, threatening our ash trees, which make up 1 in 6 trees in the city. That will ultimately be a huge loss of 330,000 trees. And part of the loss of tree canopy in the city is due to the selective removal of ash trees in anticipation of the emerald ash borer coming in. Our city foresters have done a fantastic job anticipating and planning for this pest arising. And one of the reasons we think that it hasn't been cited in Denver and hasn't caused this massive devastation that we've seen in other areas of the country is because of their proactive approach to managing and anticipating this. As we mentioned, Denver's tree canopy is inequitably distributed. This here is a map of Denver's neighborhoods showing the most densely forested neighborhoods in dark green and the lowest canopy neighborhoods in light green. You can see the disparity between the, let's see, the GES neighborhoods compared to the Country Club and South Park Hill. And GES is sort of shorthand for that Globeville, Elyria, Swansea neighborhood. Like many urban areas, we also see that with the exception of a few outliers, the wealthier neighborhoods, which have the big dollar signs, also tend to have more trees than the low income neighborhoods, which are the small dollar signs. And this relates to a history of infrastructure and policy decisions, displacement of people, and continued disinvestment in neighborhoods. Here's that same map overlaid with data showing urban heat islands, the absorption and retention of heat by the built and paved surfaces of our cityscape. So those same lower income neighborhoods, which are also home to many of Denver's communities of color, lack the tree cover to help cool and mitigate the intense heat that builds up over the summer and remains hot overnight. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that over the summers recently, is that it just doesn't cool off as we go to sleep, and it's very hard without air conditioning for our bodies to regulate. And this can be the exacerbating effect that can be lethal for those with existing health vulnerabilities. So the lack of tree cover in this low canopy neighborhood poses a stark visual contrast to this well canopied neighborhood. And you can see that on the thermometer as a nearly 15-degree difference, which is not just uncomfortable, but is actually dangerous to many members of our community. So to respond to that, as I mentioned, we've got these 4 ongoing urban forestry programs that I'll cover today, and we're aiming to engage the Denver community in planting and stewarding our city forest. And one of the things with trees, as we hit on earlier, since they don't grow naturally in this short grass prairie that we were prior to urbanization, each and every tree that we plant requires lifelong care. So it's partly about planting trees, but it's very much about caring for trees. One of our friends and partners always says every tree in Denver is on life support. And knowing how much the temperature is projected to increase and seeing those days above 95 just skyrocket in our future, we know how important it is to continue to protect and grow our urban forest to mitigate this in any way that we can.
Great, thanks so much for being able to show that, Maggie. And this was Lindsay Cutler's, again, presentation at our May Climate and Sustainability meeting on the speaker before her was speaking about specific plants or tree species that folks could plant in their own yards and ways to get residential trees. And then we had Lindsay speaking on some of these larger tree issues in Denver after that. So we thought it was a great presentation and we wanted to share it with all of you today. And then I think I'm going to turn it over to Jane again to introduce our last speaker.
Thank you. And thanks again to Linda. I really appreciated her focusing her national information on Denver so we can sort of see where we are in comparison to other places. Our next speaker is Gayle LeRoux. She's with Globeville First, one of Denver's neighborhood tree planting projects. And so Gayle, I invite you to make your presentation. Thank you for being with us.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. Just wanted to start off with a little bit of history. And so let's see. So in 2019, Globeville First was invited to join other neighborhood organizations in Elyria and Swansea and Globeville to help plant trees with funds that they were awarded from a lawsuit with I-70. So with those groups, we had planted over 150 trees throughout Globeville, Elyria, and Swansea. And, of course, we could not have done that without great partnerships that we have built with, the Lindsay from the Park People, Groundwork Denver, Chris from the Nature Conservancy. They've all been great partners. and we continue to build that partnership with them. Getting neighbors excited about trees in our neighborhood. So I'm from Globeville first, and I do live in Globeville. I have lived here for about 20 something years. I grew up in the Berkeley Park neighborhood. So I came from, huge mature tree-lined streets to living in Globeville where, the trees are very sparse. So planting trees and teaching people how to maintain them is very important to our group and our work. Let's see. Recently, this spring, we helped the park people distribute Denver Dig applications. And I believe the response from Globeville was one of the highest responses they've had in probably their history. So they were able to give away many trees. And then on Earth Day, Globeville First, along with its great partners again, were able to plant 84 baby trees in probably an 8x8 block radius. And we really wanted to keep this this planting very small and, in this small area due to many things. First, to gather neighbors together. And secondly, to just so we could all walk around the neighborhood as people were planting their trees and offer advice. Of course, we do ask the residents to attend a tree planting demonstration and tree care workshop before receiving a tree. But it was so beautiful, this last planting, because we had neighbors show up with pickups, and they were taking, their entire block of trees to their, to those neighbors. So it's just, amazing to see neighbors come together. And recently, I've been working with Donna Davis from the Colorado State Forest Service. So we received a very small grant to remove dead trees. And so we had started in South Globeville. And what I seem to notice are the blocks closer to I-70 had fewer trees than the blocks that were further away from I-70, and the same with I-25. So the closer to the highways, the less trees. And so it's really significant, and walking the neighborhood, you can really see that. I see there was a question, but I can't, does somebody want to tell me what the question was in the chat?
Yeah, it's from Keith. Keith, do you want to ask a question?
Sure, and you can answer this now, Gayle, or later after your presentation, but I was just curious all the ways that you were able to get neighbors excited about planting trees on their own property and how you got that organized. But if you can address that now or later, that's fine.
No, I'm happy to address it now. So I just think the excitement of knocking on their door, and then when they see our excitement, and then of course, many people in our neighborhood, we have very small yards. And there's an attitude about trees here that the roots are going to get into their pipes, and, it's going to cause plumbing issues for them or foundation issues for them. And, talking those issues through with neighbors and, giving them other options and looking at the right place for their trees kind of ease their mind, and just the excitement. And also letting them know that it's okay if you just want a tree for beauty as well. There's so many benefits. And of course, we cover all the benefits with each resident. But something we do that's very unique is we allow residents to go onto the nursery website where we purchase the trees from, and they get to choose a tree of their choice. And, historically in these neighborhoods, we have never been given choices of anything. We're just like, hey, we have some trees for you. Here they are. But something that's very important to me is that people plant what they, within reason. And we deal with a nursery who is very educated in trees that, survive these conditions. So our residents love that they're able to, pick out their own tree. Of course, we'll order it, we'll go pick it up for them, we'll give them the education. But in the end, they get to have a tree that they personally chose. So, let's see. Globeville First, along with Birdseed Collective, we've been hosting a series of workshops with the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. And we were just, some of the questions that were asked were, let's see, we did a rapid assessment to find out what's Globeville's most urgent issues, needs, and what are the barriers. And most of the responses were, lack of clean air. So we just feel that educating neighbors on, how trees help with air pollution, and of course, they're going to feel better in shade. So we just use, all of, we just put the, let's see, we just explained to them in, easy terms, just the benefits, and people have just been so excited. We're planning a fall planting as well. So we haven't set a date, but as soon as I know, I'll let you all know. So if any of you are interested in coming out to help, our tree canopy here is 7% or more less than other Denver neighborhoods. So that's all I really have, unless anyone else has any questions for me.
Gayle, thank you so much for bringing your personal perspective and your neighborhood perspective. If you came from a neighborhood that has a lot of trees, you obviously understand the benefit. And I think if people look at my photo, I've always had the Lorax over my shoulder from Dr. Zeus, because he speaks for the trees, and you speak for the trees. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I know, Drew, did you have something that you would like to mention about other tree planting?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. Thank you, Gayle, for that presentation. I know we've worked with you, but this is Drew Dutcher. I'm Vice President of Inc. and a delegate from the Elyria-Swansea Neighborhood Association. We were plaintiffs in the lawsuit against CDOT and Federal Highways that got $25,000 in a settlement to start planting trees in Globeville, Elyria-Swansea, and it's an area of historic pollution, I think, as Gayle has outlined. And so we have been going, that started in 2017 with $25,000. And then we were able to be awarded $240,000 from the Suncor settlement in 2019 to plant between 450 and 900 trees over the next 3 years. And those funds have just started coming through this year. But I think as Gayle has pointed out, these communities in Globeville, Elyria-Swansea are dealing with historic pollution, a serious lack of tree canopy, especially along the I-70 corridor, and just the diminished quality of life that means, the lack of trees. So far, we've planted over 200 trees in GES, and we've partnered with Park People, Nature Conservancy, and Groundwork, and others. There are 4 of us principals. That's myself, Yadira Sanchez from Swansea, and Sandra Ruiz from Globeville, and Ren Smith from the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club was they were part of the lawsuit that awarded us this. We have a website, the GES Tree Planting Project. I encourage people to look at, and we're up and running. We're sort of ramping up, and we plan to have a fall planting of trees. We could use your help, volunteers, and this will go on for 3 years with the funding from Suncor. So I'll just stop there. Thanks, by the way, to this whole presentation. Linda, that was great. From Trust for Public Land, I think you pointed out some really important things. The one thing I would say about Linda's presentation is I think she's a little easy on Denver. The fact that we have a 9% tree canopy versus a 15% average is really pathetic. And I think we really need to get stuff together. And I think we've got some serious people here who really take the need for trees seriously. And let's do it. And let's stop paving over parkland, you know, to build new development. We can find places for new development. I know we need housing, but we don't have to pave over existing green space. We can find other spaces, and let's plant trees. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Drew. I also wanted to mention that Globeville First was instrumental in pushing the city to get a pocket park on 44th in Pearl. So we are going to get a new park in South Globeville. So we're extremely excited to have more green space, and that just adds to, you know, our it's going to add to our tree canopy, but it's also going to give folks from South Globeville a very special place to be able to recreate at.
Congratulations, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. That's great.
Thank you.
So, I think people need to understand when you go back to that Heat Island map that Linda showed and Lindsay showed, this area of the city is very hot. And we had people they showed we have been told that in the summer, Globeville, Elyria, Swansea can be 13 degrees hotter than the rest of the city due to lack of trees, due to nothing but asphalt. You know, a 20-lane highway that's just been expanded through Globeville, Elyria, Swansea. So we need to plant trees and stop pouring concrete everywhere. Thank you. I'll get off my soapbox.
Thank you, Drew, and thank you, Gayle. Drew, someone has asked if you could provide the website that you mentioned in the chat.
Yes, I will put that in the chat now. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I also see there was a question about how do we respond to folks who think that trees are going to get into their pipes. So we also have a, let's see, so Birdseed Collective, we have a fund that's going to be starting in January where we're going to encourage folks. You know, we remind folks that trees don't break pipes, trees get into broken pipes. So we also have a fund that's going to help homeowners with these kind of repairs. So, you know, we're trying to help our neighbors in any way possible. So that also means old home repair. So that's coming up in January.
Great, thanks again, Gayle. We have some questions here. Gertie Grant, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments and I hope I can remember all of them. First of all, I want to thank Gayle and the point that she made about, or what strikes me about the success of her project so far is that, number one, it is led by people from the community as opposed to outsiders coming in and saying, this is what you need. And number two, the involvement of the people getting the trees from the very beginning, choosing their trees, putting the time and effort into getting involved in the very beginning about what is going to happen to their property, in my experience when I was running Denver Digs Trees, is really critical to the survival and the success of the trees that they get in their property. Back on the maps of the Heat Island, one of the things that strikes me is that many of the neighborhoods that have had those orange dots are neighborhoods that were built after World War II when the car was prime, and the streets are much wider there than they are in many of the older parts of the city. And it seems to me that it's going to be really challenging to get trees, even 55, 60-foot tall trees that partly shade that street to cool the heat island. And I hope that city planners are looking at putting less emphasis on cars and more emphasis on the sustainability, walking, providing areas for trees to plant between the sidewalk and the street, et cetera, because it just strikes me that North Park Hill, Westwood, all of those areas that have tiny little sidewalks right out next to the street, and no area between the sidewalk and the street to plant a tree that will eventually shade the street. I also wanted to ask a question or make a comment. What I see going on in my neighborhood, which is right off just east of Broadway, north of I-25, is that people are increasingly landscaping with rock, and they are putting 5-6 inch diameter rocks around trees. And it really drives me nuts because no tree can survive without water in this environment. And I think it is a challenge for those of us who live in neighborhoods like that, where people are increasingly landscaping with big rocks that are difficult for people to walk across if you are coming from the street to the sidewalk. And it's also really not healthy for the trees. And also landscaping with the fake turf, which in my opinion looks better than landscaping with rock, and it does let water through, and it's easier to remove if subsequent owners change their mind. But what I see missing in information that we get from the city forester and perhaps from the park people is what are good ways to landscape around trees in order to foster their survival in the long run. That's it.
Great, thank you, Gertie. Linda, do you want to take a stab at that? There's also a question in the chat related to pocket parks, which might be related to the size question we had earlier. So maybe you could tie that in as well.
Yeah, I guess, pocket park. So park size is an interesting thing. In really densely populated cities, Manhattan, Newark, New Jersey, even parts of Denver where I've been to, every time I go to Denver, it looks different and there are like new buildings. I'm very disoriented when I go, but in the downtown areas of Denver, those tiny pocket parks can be lifelines for people who otherwise don't have any other type of green space. So I think in this case, Denver Parks and Rec is probably trying to be just as opportunistic as they can be and get these pocket parks in places, because once you have some space that is part of the park system, you have an opportunity to do something with it. So you can increase canopy, you can put some native vegetation there. So I would advocate always trying to put in pocket parks where you can. In addition to the heat mitigation benefit, you just have a lot of other mental health benefits. There's so much more really good science emerging that talks about the mental health benefits from being able to visually see green things. There's really interesting science on the olfactory senses, effect on your hormones as well. And I think these days, everybody needs any break that we can get. And if your pocket park can afford you that, I say we absolutely should take it. The other thing I would say is that an interesting trend that we're seeing across the 100 largest cities is the conversion of schoolyards into what we now call community schoolyards. So the park district entering into an agreement with the local school district through something called a joint use agreement keeps schoolyards open to the public after school hours. And I'm not as familiar with schools across Colorado in Denver, but at least for a lot of other bigger cities the size of Denver, a lot of schoolyards are asphalt. So they're fenced in, they're asphalt, they are not vibrant, beautiful, cool places for kids. So what TPL does is works with kids and students to design climate smart parks. They are outdoor classrooms effectively. So there's a good education opportunity, academic achievement opportunity, good for students, good for teachers. And then because they remain open to the neighbors, to the public after school hours, those are additional park acres. And again, more, if you have park acres that are being maintained by an agency, you can do more with it potentially. So size, I think size is important, not so much, I mean, size is important because every inch of green space that we can get today is going to be useful, especially for cities that are growing like Denver. What was the statistic? 1,000 new people entering the city every month is crazy. So we need densification. We do need smart housing. We need more housing, but it doesn't have to come at the cost of green space. And in fact, you know, hopefully more people are thinking about green space with housing, with population growth. And so I think, you know, the size of the park is less important. I think it's more about, well, what can you do with it once you have it?
Great, thanks. Any comment on the rocks and the turf or any of those issues? If not, we'll turn to our next question from Woody Garnsey.
Hi, good morning on this hot day. I just want to underscore that this entire discussion today underscores the critical importance of preserving the 155 acres of the Park Hill Golf Course open space land that is currently protected by its city-owned perpetual open space conservation easement. And for those of you who don't know, for the last 2 years, the current city administration through its Community Planning and Development Department has been spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars on a planning process working for the owner of that land, Westside Investment Partners. The city Planning and Development Department considers Westside, not Denver taxpayers, to be the client of the Planning and Development Department, and that's documented in emails was secured under Freedom of Information Open Records requests. So the city is pursuing this plan. They're looking to take a plan of some sort to the city council sometime in the next several months, which would be an approved area plan for significant residential and commercial development on the land. And eventually, because of the success of the citizen-run 301 ballot effort last November, there will have to be a citywide vote on whether to support breaking the conservation easement and allowing development on that land. That vote will take place, according to what the city planning and development department employees say, either this November or more likely next April. So I'm just giving people a heads up about that ongoing issue. Some people think the issue was resolved last November when 301 was victorious by over a 2-to-1 margin throughout the city. And we also defeated the West Side, the developers measure by a 2-to-1 margin as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Woody. Jane, I'm not seeing any other questions. Drew raised his hand. Drew, feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, I kind of want to sort of relate what Linda said and what Woody just said. I think, Linda, I'm not quite letting you off. I'm sorry if I'm not letting you off the hook yet, because I think there's a difference. There was a friend of mine, John Prosser, who referred to large parks and trees and green spaces as the lungs of the city. And I think the pocket parks serve a good purpose. They're very valuable, but they're like the alveoli, if you want to use a respiratory image. But I think that the trees, what we've shown today, they're part of the lungs of the city, and we keep cutting them down, we keep chopping them off to develop. And I think in the case of 155 acres, that's green space with trees growing on it, that has been left in a decrepit state by the landowner, West Side. I'm talking about Park Hill Golf Course. Isn't it important? Large areas, large parks with trees have a cooling effect, and the combined effect is so much greater than these little pocket parks. I just think that's something that we just can't ignore. And I'm not going to be satisfied by the city saying, oh, let's put a little pocket park here, a little pocket park there. Great, do that. But stop developing 155 acres. Why are we pushing this? So I'd just like to hear from Linda. Don't you think that we should not be developing 155 acres of existing green space with a conservation easement on it that we paid for? Why would we develop that? Do you think where is that in the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide? How is that helping by doing that?
Well, I definitely, I disagree. I agree with everything you said around the accumulation of canopy in a place is gonna give so many more benefits, right? Multiple ecosystem services benefits to human beings. Yes. I feel the tension in Denver and every other city that's growing to sort of meet the needs of development, property values, economic value. I wouldn't ever stake, I think it's a false argument that that you have to choose between open space versus pocket parks. I think you can have both. I appreciate when a park system is trying to look at both. So I think that's one issue. And then you have a second question that I think a lot of you are interested in around just development over on a golf course and an easement that is in place. Generally speaking, TPL is advocating for people to have access to the outdoors wherever they can. And I think that there is a way to have both, where you can have development, you can also have good access. And so, every golf course development is going to be unique. We have certainly purchased golf courses that have been completely disrepair, abandoned effectively by the local community, and converted those and conveyed them to the local county. But it's a community by community decision, and I think it's not necessarily the case that it's one or the other. It can be both, and it just takes the city, the county, the local neighborhood residents talking about how they could possibly have both in place.
Great. Our next question comes from Mark Shervany.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call. My question to Drew, to your point regarding large projects, for those that may not be aware, CDOT is currently involved with the replacement of 50-year-old wood fencing along I-70 from Pecos to I-76. In total, it's about 12 miles. This is being replaced with precast concrete, much taller, higher panels that will do nothing but radiate the collection of the sun throughout the day. I spoke with CDOT, and there are no plans other than seeding this area. My question was whether or not they would plant any trees that would shade these walls in any fashion, and their response was, without an irrigation system, as Lindsay said earlier, these trees would not stand any survival rate whatsoever. So they're just going to seed this. But when it's finished, you're going to see miles and miles of precast concrete wall that are going to be radiating a tremendous amount of heat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Angela Garcia. Angela, are you on the line? If not, we'll switch to Pete.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I kind of mentioned this in the chat, but I think the conversation here around having big central parks is incredibly important, especially coming from Honey, where we have, I think we might have the fewest parks out of all the neighborhoods, or we're in the running for fewest parks. I forget what the current numbers are. And so I totally agree with that. But like looking at the landmass inside of the neighborhood and things there's just nowhere to put a park with our current kind of land use guidelines and things like that. And so one thing that I'd encourage people to heavily consider is, we're going to see increases in population. And I think we need to consider kind of the trade-offs there of how are we going to support more density, perhaps multifamily housing, taller buildings, things like that, to support these parks, being as if one person drives from Windsor or Castle Rock to Denver for a job or something on a few days a week, that will offset hundreds of trees in terms of CO2 emissions and things like that. So I think it's just worth considering, like, having dense cities is well shown to reduce CO2 emissions and things like that. And so we just need to make sure that we're considering both sides of that equation.
Thank you, Pete. Angela, I see your hand going up and down. Are you interested in asking a question? Okay, does anybody else have any comments or questions or feedback? If not, I'll turn it back to Jane for some announcements about a meeting coming up or to Keith maybe for our next meeting. Keith?
I will just say before pass this over to Jane that we are planning to do, I think this has been an amazing discussion, and I think there's so many things that I'd like to keep talking about here, but I do want to say that the zoning and planning, Parks and Rec, and the climate and sustainability committees have been working over the last few months on a series of presentations and a series of discussions about trees and open space issues across the city that we're going to continue over the next several months. It started with the climate and sustainability conversation in May about residential trees and what you can plant in your own yards. And then Lindsay did that presentation, that excellent presentation on the history of trees in Denver. And this is a continuation of that, this discussion on heat islands. We're going to continue this into next month at the Climate and Sustainability Committee with a presentation on Denver's urban forestry plan. And I think, one additional presentation or discussion that we want to have coming up hopefully this fall is going to be on neighborhood tree planting efforts like the ones going on in Globeville and LeRoux and other places around the city, and how can we get neighborhoods to do more tree planting? What are the motivations out there for residents to get more involved in the maintenance of trees, and whether or not that's a responsibility. I mean, I think the question is of homeowners, or I know several folks have also talked about maybe that's a responsibility the city needs to be in charge of on in easements is tree maintenance. And I know the sidewalk issue is coming up this fall, and maybe this is something down the road that the city needs to look at as well. So we're just very excited to have folks here today and for our presenters, and also moving forward and having more of these discussions. Jane?
Thank you, Keith. I want to thank everyone who attended today and everyone who participated today. This has been a great discussion. Lots to take home and think about. And if you are interested in helping to volunteer with any of the tree planting that's coming up this fall, you can send your information to Keith and I. We get information at sustainability at Denver INC. I'm sure it always takes a bunch of people to help do a lot of trees, so it gives you a chance to get out and be a part of the community. Thanks again to Linda and Gayle and Mark for taking the questions, and back to Loretta. Thank you all very much.
All right, thanks for those great presentations. If you haven't observed the chat, just make sure you have an opportunity to look at that. I think there's some great links in there that you can look at, and so that would be very helpful. Plant trees in your yard. I planted 4 when I moved, well, no, 5 when I moved in, and and I have a small property. Most of the homes in Baker are 25 feet wide. I actually have 50 feet, and I planted 2 New Mexican privets, 2 Gamble oaks, several other trees I'm not even thinking, and we've done street trees, so replace some. So keep working on that, people. Replace rocks with beautiful plants, and I think it's great if we can do this. So I think it's been a wonderful conversation, and I think this is going to be ongoing, because we really need to make sure that we keep our canopy, and you see the difference between that 93 degrees and 95 in a shaded area. And I sure felt it yesterday when I was on a walk, and today we will certainly feel it, if you're outside at all. So please drink water. Please make sure that you go to our the Survey Monkey. If you're a INC delegate, please make sure that you vote again. I'm going to put that other reminder. Is there any new business today? Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add, or any events coming up you'd like to bring to us? Any hands? Anybody have anything?
Loretta, did anyone mention the passing of the expanded waste services proposal?
No, go ahead. If you want to speak on that a minute, that's great.
Yeah, so on the 27th of June, a whole bunch of people went in front of city council and spoke in favor of the expanded waste. They're now calling it expanded waste collection. They changed the name of it, services. Expanded waste collection proposal, which will give us weekly recycling, weekly composting, and a charge a fee for trash, depending on how much trash you create, from the smallest bin to the largest bin, as well as factoring in lower income folk who will be able to either get a rebate or completely free from the fees of the trash. It's a great proposal. It passed in city council. Jane and I were there. I spoke in favor of it, and I was really happy that it passed 8-5, and it will be implemented in January of 2023. So if you want to find out more about it, you can go to the city's website, and they have a whole page on it.
And I have to thank Thomas. His photo has a line of all the bins. I'm just like amazed. That's a lot of bins there. So it looks like compost, recycling, and trash are all lined up on some street there. So fascinating. Anyway, I want to thank you all today. And again, stay cool. It's going to be 100 degrees or so today. And if you're on the street and no tree canopy, we know it's going to be warmer. I just want to put a quick note in there. I put a link to a book, and I don't know if our presenter Linda, if you've read the book Nature Fix. It's from a woman who used to live in Boulder, and she also used to work for High Country News. And if you haven't read High Country News, it's a wonderful Paonia based news paper. But anyway, she wrote this book. She used to live in Boulder, used to go hiking, and then her husband got a job in DC. She moved to DC, and she heard plane noise constantly. That was the first thing she said. But it's a great book that talks about the benefits of being near nature, and it talks about, she actually was traveling all around the world. She went to Korea, where they put a waterfall near a highway to make water sound instead of the highway sound, and it was a path. So it's an easy read, but it's a great read. And so take the time. I got it at Denver Botanic Gardens. I picked it up there and read it, and at their library. So if you get an opportunity, I'm sure our libraries have it, but it's a great book. So And I want to thank everybody. We had a great group. We had over 50 people here today. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for our presenters. I can't thank you enough for this great presentation. And I think we'll sign off for today. All right. Take care, everyone.